Senator, I want to start by asking about the tragic shooting Wednesday night in Washington, D.C., near the Capitol. Two young employees of the Israeli embassy there were murdered by someone waiting outside the event they were attending. You're head of the Intelligence Committee and think a lot about Homeland Security as well as the anti-Semitism that exists and has been a problem here and abroad. First, on the shooting, just from an operational point of view, do we need to harden targets in the United States where Jewish Americans are congregating?
Well, Mark, first off, let me extend my deepest condolences on behalf of all Arkansans to the families of the two people who were murdered last night, and extend my condolences to the people of Israel. One victim was an Israeli national. I believe he was here on a diplomatic passport. It makes it especially heinous that it happened just blocks away from the U.S. Capitol. Unfortunately, I think the anti-Semitic murders you saw last night is downstream from the wave of anti-Semitic incitement we've seen across America and across the world. And our Jewish fellow citizens shouldn't have to live behind blast barriers and barbed wire and have armed guards outside of every site where Jews may congregate, at Jewish day schools or summer camps or synagogues, or last night at a museum. We should do a better job of confronting bravely and strongly and consistently anti-Semitism in every form, every place we find it. We should very aggressively condemn it and prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law when it happens. So, for instance, this depraved murderer should face the full weight of the law, to include the federal death penalty. And we should live in a society where Jewish Americans can congregate, they can celebrate their culture, their religion, and their history peacefully and without fear that some anti-Semitic madman is going to come in and shoot them up.
I know that's the goal, and I've been crying most of the morning over it because the brutality of it and the horror of it. But I just go back to the practical question: do we need to harden targets? Do we need to have more security now until we can do the longer term project of eradicating or limiting anti-Semitism? Do we need more security for events? I know people shouldn't have to be behind barbed wire, but is that a reality now?
Sadly, I think it is for many Jews in America and at many Jewish institutions and locations in America. And that's something, as a non-Jew, it's hard for many Americans to fathom. Yes, there's always the chance, for instance, of random violence in public places, or someone going into a church or a school and committing atrocity. But that's different from Jewish parents today in America having to drop their kids at a Jewish day school and seeing armed guards outside of it because of the wave of anti-Semitism, which has led to anti-Semitic violence here and around the world. So I think it's a regrettable fact that many Jewish leaders of Jewish institutions or gatherings are considering further securing their sites to protect their fellow Jews. But again, that's not the America we should live in. We should condemn anti-Semitism forcefully. We should pursue and prosecute it, especially the heinous act of violence you saw last night and these similar kinds of violence. And we should aspire to live in America where our Jewish friends don't have to have armed guards or live behind blast barriers and barbed wire.
The timing of this is unavoidable. The two things going on that potentially could incite more anti-Semitism because of the way much of the world treats Israel. One is Prime Minister Netanyahu seems intent on going back into Gaza, and a lot of criticism that there's insufficient humanitarian aid associated with this mission. And there's talk of a potential Israeli strike against Iran if the nuclear pact falls apart between Iran and the United States. Is Prime Minister Netanyahu have to factor in the potential backlash of those two potential actions, or one actual and one potential action, to make sure that he doesn't do things to exacerbate the problem of anti-Semitism?
Well, I expect Prime Minister Netanyahu to do what's right for the nation of Israel, to continue to prosecute the war against Hamas, which committed the worst atrocity against Jews since World War II on October 7th, 2023, and to ensure that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And I expect President Trump will back him to the hilt on that, as he has said so. I think for everyone else here in America, one way to help minimize this wave of anti-Semitism is not to apply double standards to the nation of Israel. It's fine to criticize Israel if you have legitimate policy differences with them. I thought for much of my adult life that Israel's economic policies were outdated and semi-socialist until Prime Minister Netanyahu, in turn as finance minister, modernized those policies and unleashed the free market prosperity you see in Israel today. But when you apply one set of standards to Israel and another set of standards to every other nation in the world, I don't see how you can see that as anything other than anti-Semitism. Look at what's happened in Gaza in recent months, for instance. Israel has tried to supply food and aid to innocent, suffering Gazans who are suffering not because of Israel's war against Hamas, but because of Hamas's brutality. And what has happened? The same thing that's happened for the last 19 months, as I predicted. When you send aid into Gaza, you are sending it to Hamas and Hamas's fighters. Yet many voices in the West continue to pressure Israel to directly aid and comfort its enemy in a war of survival. We didn't provide aid and care packages to the Japanese and the Germans in World War II. After the war is over, yes, we helped rebuild them, but we did not do it in the middle of a shooting war for our own survival. We shouldn't apply those kind of standards to Israel either.